The actor who played Gibbs on the NCIS show was a popular face on our screens till he left the show in the 19th episode. It might be surprising for some to discover he was not the only actor in his family. He had a sister who was also into acting. Well, to be fair, most of his family was into acting. Who was Kristin Nelson? Keep watching, as this video will be looking into the tragic life of the famous actress. So who was Kristin Nelson? Although better known as sister to Mark Harmon now, she was well known during her prime years. She was born on June 25th, 1945 to American football star Tom Harmon and Elise Knox, model, actress, and fashion designer. All her life, she had always been surrounded by popular people and celebrities. She went to school with the children of other celebrities, and at age 17, she married famous teen idol Ricky Nelson. At the time the duo got married, they were already pregnant with their first child, and just 6 months after their wedding, they welcomed their first child, Tracy. The duo had first met when she was 12, and she'd fallen in love with his family before actually falling for their son. Thereafter, she became a 12-year-old fan of Ricky. And when did she start her acting career? The 50s famous stars Ozzie and Harriet, who were parents to Ricky, had their own television show, then known as The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. Upon her marriage into the family, she was thrust into the spotlight as a regular cast member. She made her debut in the episode Rick's Wedding Ring, which made sense as it was just after their wedding. About 2 years after joining the TV show, she co-starred with her husband in Love and Kisses, a romantic comedy. The casting of the film was really appropriate because the plot was based on two 18-year-olds who eloped to reside in the groom's residence with his sister and parents. Looking at the ages the lead character's actors got married in reality, well, minus the eloping part, it was like they were acting themselves out. The young couple in the film eventually realized marriage wasn't exactly what they had envisioned it to be. Ironically, the same proved true for the couple in real life about 12 years after their shotgun wedding. We'll be getting into their messy marriage in a minute, but first let's check out her other TV appearances and her painting career. The beautiful actress appeared in a total of 30 episodes of the sitcom The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. After the last episode aired in 1966, she starred in a 1970 live-action film, The Resurrection of Bronco Billy, alongside Johnny Crawford. The film was favorably received and won an Academy Award for Best Short Subject. About 5 years later, she played Jean Reed, wife of LAPD officer Jim Reed, in 3 episodes of the police procedural drama Adam 12. Her other appearances on TV were mostly guest appearances before she wrapped her acting career 7 years later in 1982. She featured as a prostitute in Liar's Moon alongside Matt Dillon and Cindy Fisher. So, when did she start painting? She started painting around the time of her marriage when she was 17, and about 5 years later, she had her very first one-woman art show. What kind of art did she make? Well, her paintings were generally in the primitive genre and were widely acclaimed. In fact, her work has been compared to that of Grandma Moses, the famous artist who started her career at an advanced age. Her most prominent work was When the Kennedys Were in the White House painting, which was actually bought by Kennedy. After the purchase of that painting, her art career received a huge boost, and in the 70s, her paintings earned her up to $5,000 a piece. Unfortunately, Nelson didn't live happily for a long time in her first marriage, and even after it ended. How did her fairy tale life go so sour? Kristin had everything: money, fame, and a handsome husband and beautiful children. Sadly, her marriage wasn't happy because she and Ricky were frequently clashing with one another. The duo was brought up comfortably, so when they built a family together, they lived very extravagant lifestyles that demanded Ricky to go on more tours. Subsequently, the frequent tours placed a strain on their marriage. In 1975, the couple was on the verge of breaking up, and just 2 years later, Kristin had moved Ricky out of their home into a rented house. Just about a month after this, Kristin found him there with 2 cheerleaders. In Rick's defense, Kristin had set up that incident to use against him in court. Later that year, Kristin filed for a divorce, but she didn't go through with that after they temporarily reconciled. 3 years later, they bought an estate worth $750,000, perhaps with hopes of finally settling down. But that wasn't exactly the case because Rick still continued his consistent tours, and just 6 years later, after that exorbitant purchase, Kristin filed for divorce again. They went through a very nasty divorce that got nastier as it was stretched out, and they both established they were both into drugs and alcohol, and were also bad parents from their back-to-back accusations. She acknowledged this herself years after the divorce ended. She said, "We were hippie rock and rollers. We did what everyone else was doing all those years, and after a while, we were totally messed up, both of us. I got into therapy, and so did he for a while, but then he started not showing up. I tried telling my family, there's a drug problem here and we've got to all help, but they totally denied there was anything wrong." When the clashes between Kristin and Rick started, their firstborn Tracy stayed with her father, and after several pushes and pulls, the divorce was finalized in 1982. After the divorce, Kristin plunged into alcohol and drug abuse. She was too drunk to paint most of the time, so she had to take a job as an assistant casting director for a pay of $200 per week. She couldn't even take care of her child because she was mostly unstable during this period, so her youngest child, Sam, had to go away with her parents before moving on to stay with her brother Mark and his wife, Pam Dauber. Meanwhile, her twin sons twins went to stay with their dad after they turned 18, and sadly Ricky passed away just 3 months after in 1985. He died alongside his fiancée Helen Blair and 5 members of his road company in a plane crash. The plane had crashed into electrical wires and trees during an emergency landing. That was a very dark time in Kristin's life, and her habits worsened so much that Mark had to step in and push her to go into rehab, which she later did. 2 years later, she was done with her rehab stint, but was informed Mark and his wife filed for custody of Sam, who was 12 at the time. It didn't go well for Kristin, and she was ordered to stay 200 yards away from Mark's house and Pam's place of work. The custody battle got fiercer, and at some point Kristin even accused Pam of using cocaine. Due to the increased bad air, Mark had to step down on account of too much blood spilled, and he was granted visiting rights. After that, Mark, Kristin, and Sam agreed to sign in for family therapy. What did she do to heal after those difficult times? Well, some wounds never fully heal, but about 2 years after she passed away, Sam was asked about his relationship with his mom. He actually said they were close at that time and she was living in New Mexico. He said, "As you get older, things that were important aren't important anymore. You work through them or you don't, but for the most part, you hope to. I think we're good in a way together and we've got a good relationship." That was a great improvement from someone who used a dragon to describe his mother's instability as a child. Kristin eventually started painting again and even remarried. She tied the knot with Mark Tinker, a TV producer and director, in 1988, but their marriage didn't last forever. About 12 years later, they were divorced and Kristin moved to New Mexico to settle down. Sadly, she passed away in her home on May 1st, 2018. Her death was confirmed by her daughter on Facebook, and Tracy mentioned that Kristin had died of a heart attack. Kristin ultimately managed to find peace after she got clean, and though she might be gone now, she lives on in the memory of her loved ones who stood by her in her time of need. And without her brother who urged her to go into rehab, she might have spiraled into a deeper pit. And that's the story of Kristin Nelson. Thanks for tuning in, and bye-bye.